What's going on, everybody? This is your tour guide around the SWAC C Wells coming at you with another video today. Y'all make sure y'all lock in with us. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and become a part of the SWAC Talk family by becoming a member. 99 cents gets you a membership to the YouTube channel. We have special perks coming at you. We're going to be dropping special members only videos and shorts. I'm going to have rants and reactions to different things that I want to put there. So if you want to get everything, man, become a member of the Swag Talk crew for 99 cents and get down, man. And so we're going to still be bringing y'all a lot of stuff, swag smoke and everything like that, and all our normal videos. But we also bring y'all that membership tier. So get down with that. Check out the Facebook and Instagram, both Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. And now let's get on with the show, man. Let's do it.
Bojo God. Wednesday, Sundays, catch the ride. Football hoops, we breaking wide. Stats and facts, truth on high. SWAT talk where the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Hit the corner of the field, we strategize. Breaking the game down, no disguise. Play by play, we analyze. I wear sharp, we magnify. SWAT talk where the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays, heat, Sundays, ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays, heat, Sundays, ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk when the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel.
What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk, the show we cover the swag inside and out. I am your tour guide around the Swag C Wells coming at you, and today is our Mississippi Valley 2025 preview, and I'm a keep it 100 with y'all, man. This one was not easy to do. I'm just gonna be mad transparent with y'all. This one I have no clue, honestly, of how I wanted to bring this to y'all, uh, because information on this team is sparse. You know, they don't have an updated roster yet, so you can't go by that. And trying to go through every guy's social media to see if he's still on the team, man. That's super time consuming. So this is probably going to be pretty generic. And like I said, I've been coming down on Valley recently, but I'm not going to do that here because sometimes it's just not really worth doing. So we're gonna attempt to make it through this as best as we can, and we're gonna just make it happen. Um, so let's go ahead and jump into this, and let's see where we end up at. Last season was not a good season for Valley, although they did have the one win that everybody and mama talks about. But this team finished 1-11 last season and 1-7 in conference, and just was not, honestly, other than probably honestly the first half of that FAMU game was probably one of the better halves that they played. I think defensively, I think they played a decent second half against FAMU, but offensively they didn't really do a lot. But they held on and won that game. This is a team that finished last in scoring offense. They averaged 16 points per game. Um, they were last in scoring defense. They gave up 40 points per game. They were 10th in total offense at 284 yards per game. They scored 27 touchdowns. They had average of 4.4 yards per play, which I believe is the lowest mark in the league. Defensively, they were last in total defense at 457 yards per game. They gave up 59 touchdowns, which is the most in the league. They allowed 7 yards per play on defense, which is just amazing. You almost giving up a you're basically 3 yards away from a first down every time you ran a play against Valley. That is by far the highest number in the league. They were last in rushing offense at 86 yards per game. They scored 12 touchdowns on the ground, and they averaged 2.5 yards per carry. They were last in rushing defense at 238 yards per game. They go up 31 touchdowns, um, and they allowed 5.9 yards per play on the ground. When they went to the air, they were actually pretty solid in the passing game in terms but maybe that's because a lot of teams below them had lower yardage, but they averaged 198 yards per game, which was sixth in the league. They threw 15 touchdowns, but they led the league with 21 interceptions, completing 51% of their passes. um, so not really efficient, but they were able to kind of move the ball through the air. They were 10th in passing defense at 218 yards per game. They gave up 28 touchdowns, which were the most in the league, and they had 5 interceptions, which was the fewest in the league. Uh, so not a lot there, honestly. They allowed um, they allowed 24 sacks, so they did a pretty solid job protecting the quarterback. Um, They just weren't able to do a lot with it. They were 11th in sacks by their defense with 14. Um, Third down conversion rate, they were eighth at 32% on offense. They were 11th on defense at 48%. Fourth down offense, they were eighth at 42%. And they were 10th in fourth down defense at 60%. So they really just could not get off the field no matter how it happened on defense. Um, they just struggled there. Um, Red zone offense, they converted 60. They were 62% in the red zone, 20 of 32. They had 18 touchdowns, 12 on the ground, six through the air. They were 2 of 6 on field goals in the red zone, and they turned the ball over 8 times, 3 interceptions, and 5 turnovers on downs. Defensively in the red zone, they allowed 84%, 42 of 50. They gave up 32 touchdowns, which were the most in top of the most in the league in the red zone. They gave up 20 touchdowns on the ground, 12 through the air. Opponents were 10 or 12 on field goals, and they had 5 takeaways in the red zone, 2 fumbles, and 3 turnovers on downs. Um, just honestly, just not the kind of season that you want to have in your coach's second year. Like I said, they had 21 interceptions on the season and 6 fumbles lost, so they turned the ball over 27 times, and they had 14 takeaways, so they were uh, minus 13, and you're not gonna win many games like that. Um, and this is where it kind of gets a little dicey because now we're gonna go through some of our returners, and honestly, I don't really know how many of these guys are still there, but they do return to Fabian Fant, who is a guy who has some explosiveness. He has a 54-yard run last season, which was by far the longest run that the team had. I mean, after that, the next longest run was like 29 yards. So they did not have a lot of explosiveness. They also, as far as I know, returned. Well, let's say Fant had 252 yards on the season and 2 touchdowns. One of only 3 guys to score a touchdown on the ground. 6 of those touchdowns were by Tajarian Williams, who was their quarterback, but now he's tight end at Alabama A&M. They also um, returned Zamarion Kendall, who had 67 yards on the season. Um, so not a lot there. You lose, like I said, you lose Williams, you lose Thomas. Those are guys who really carried the load for you in the last couple years. And in losing Williams puts a big dent in the passing game as well. I mean, he had an up and down season, but you know, he was by far their top passer. Ruben Lee is the top returning quarterback. 18 or 34 on the season, had 249 yards, two touchdowns, one interception. They were, they were a team who honestly did not have a lot of explosive plays. They lose Nathan Rimbert and Jackson Davis, their top two guys in receptions and yards, and so they do, as far as I know, return Carrick Ross, who played in 6 games and had 27 catches for 288 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he was on a good pace before he went out. Um, Other than that, there's not a lot there. I mean, they only had, honestly, when you look at the season, they only had like 13 guys catch a pass last season. So for the most part, they had 5 guys with double figure receptions, and then everybody else had 6 or less. So not a lot there. Those They had 6 guys with over 100 yards in receiving. And so, it just wasn't much there. Nathan Rimbert had a 76-yard catch. The next longest catch they had after that was a 66-yarder by the Fabian Fant. And that goes to his explosiveness. He had a 54-yard run and a 66-yard reception. After that, 34 yards. So this team just was not explosive. And like I said, with those 21 interceptions, which a lot of those came early in the season, they just couldn't get out of their own way offensively. They did bring in a quarterback from New Mexico State, Brandon Nunez, a big guy. I think he's a decent runner. I will see, if he challenges. Looking at the portal list that I have, they didn't really bring in a lot of guys, but I know that they brought in more than what's on this list, and just being able to find that has been tough. So with Coach Buckley in his first year, I really think this is like a year zero. I mean, a lot of people can say, Valley got this, they brought in this, and they're gonna do A, B, and C. I can't say that because I don't see that in front of me. I think if he can shape the mentality of this team and get these guys to buy into what he wants, and take it step by step. I think they can start to get back on that trajectory that they were on when Coach Danzig was there. Um, they just have, I mean, it's going to take some work. Like I said, bringing in however many guys you're bringing in. Like I said, I know they've been, hitting the portal in the JUCO ranks, pretty hard. They suppose, have increased the team speed. But it's gonna all come down to what happens in the trenches, and when you can't run the ball effectively and you can't stop the run, you're gonna find yourself behind the 8 ball in a lot of games. And defensively, they lost a lot from that defense. They lost the majority of their guys. Basically, I want to say basically their top 5 or 6 tacklers are gone. Um, and so when you look at what they did return on the defensive line, um, they returned Douglas Frank. I mean, excuse me, Tyson Pirtle. Played in 7 games, had 15 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. The top returning linebacker is Douglas Franklin. He played in 11 games, had 31 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a quarterback hurry, and 2 fumble recoveries. And in the secondary, Deshari Keith played in 12 games, had 29 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 4 pass breakups. So, like you're losing, you're losing guys who were your top producers. But when you look at what the team did, maybe that's for the better. I mean, maybe starting over can give you a better opportunity to come up with something because obviously what was there wasn't really working. So maybe a fresh start with your guys can maybe speed up some of this process a little bit. But I don't think this team is going to win a lot of games. Um, if they can be competitive in games and put themselves in position to win, then I think that would be solid. I mean, you do have a couple playmakers in Ross and Fant um, that can produce for you. Um, other than that, like I said, I really don't know. They lose their punter, Alexander Davis. He went to FAMU, but they do return Marco Jovic, who was the kicker. He was 4-9 on field goals. He had a longer 51, really erratic. He was 0 for 2 from 20 to 29 yards, 1 for 3 from 30 to 39 yards. He was 2 or 3 from 40 to 49 yards, and 1 for 1 from 50 plus. So he was a much better kicker from 40 plus than he was from 20 to 39 yards. And that's just baffling to me. Uh, he was basically 3 of 4 from 40 plus and one of 5 from 20 to 39 yards. So he was a lot more trustworthy from a long distance than he was from a short distance. And that kind of shows what this team was. When you can't get the easy points, but you can get the hard points. And that shows you it's tough. Um, Carrick Ross returns in punts. He had 2 punt returns for 20 yards. I had a long of 11. He also had 14 kickoff returns for 260 yards, average 18 yards per return. Also, Fant had 10 returns for 204 yards, average 20 yards per return. So, like I said, there is playmaking ability there. Honestly, the key to this team other than the fact that this team is a total unknown to me, and like I said, I'm being real transparent with this. On the top of my notes for this show, I wrote this 8 question marks. I have no clue. I've never said that before in my life with this kind of stuff. I don't know. So you have to kind of piecemeal your thoughts and ideas on this team. And like I said, maybe this is for the better for Coach Buckley that there is not a lot returning or there is not a lot that has produced, and you can kind of mold this team to what you want. And I think that's your best case scenario for this team because there's just not a lot there. Um, and just trying to figure some things out. The offensive line, honestly, was when it came to pass protection, they weren't that bad. But when it comes to opening up holes for the run game, they weren't good. So that line was also young. So if they can return some of those guys and those guys can work together and grow together under this new staff, then maybe that can help. But the one thing that's always going to hurt Valley, no matter who the coach is numbers. Um, Valley has always had skill guys. They may not have a lot of skill guys, but you look at a guy like Booker Chambers. You look at, like I said, Nathan Rimbert. Uh, they've had, a few guys here and there who can really make some plays in their offense or special teams. Um, you look at those guys and they just don't have a lot of it. And then they don't, like I said, they don't have the depth, so they can't afford to be. Honestly, they can't really be in tight games because they wear down. They may play you tight for a half, and then the second half they may wear down, and that's one of the things that really hurts this team and this program, and that's why this team and program have not been able to really do a lot. You know, like I said, you just look at some of the guys that they've had. Caleb Johnson was an amazing running back for them in recent years. They just don't have a lot of those guys. And so whenever you find yourself in that position, it's tough. And so to me, this is a building year. This is a year zero. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but sometimes, the truth hurts. So you gotta wear a band-aid, like Scarface say. I don't have, like I said, I don't have a lot of optimism for this team this season, and that's typically not the way I like to operate. I try to find the best in everything that I do in these kind of things. I try to take my emotion out of these things. I try to, be as logical as I can with my educated guesses, because that's all they are, is educated guesses, or at least guesses. Maybe they're not educated, maybe they're just guesses. But I try to be as fair and balanced as I can. And this one, it just doesn't really go that route. But when you look at what this schedule is, I put this team down for 1.5 wins as their win total. I'm I'm hard pressed right now to put them over that. Um, there isn't a lot there in terms of toss up games. I mean, just looking at the opening of the schedule, you open up at home against Southern. Um, I'm not saying that that's an impossible game to win, but with a new team, you maybe, playing that first game at home, first ever game on SWAC TV, new coach, new energy, maybe this can be one of those emotional games that you can kind of push through and, catch Southern coming off of whatever happens in the MEAC Challenge. Southern, this is a trap game. It's only week one, and it's a trap game because they got Bama State like the next week. So they can't get caught up in whatever if they beat Central, they can't come in too high. If they lose to Central, they can't come in too low. But I don't really have a clue what this team is gonna do offensively. I don't really have a clue what their philosophy is defensively. So on paper at this point, these games, when you look at team A, team B on paper, um, I go with the team who I know is an established commodity. And so I think that this could be a tighter game than some people think, but I don't think they pull it out at this point. They got 2 games on the road back to back, going to Tarleton State on the 6th and Southeastern Louisiana on the 13th. In both those games, I put them as L's. Valley doesn't really typically play well on the road. I mean, yes, their only win last season came on the road, but for the most part, in non-conference play, they definitely struggle away from home. They don't really have a lot of home games in the non-conference. This is probably one of the seasons where they have the earliest non-conference game at home. So that could be a positive, but you got those 2 games. I think you drop those. You get Texas Southern at home, which is a team that I think is ahead of you right now. So I really don't, I maybe in some years I would mark that as a toss up, but right now I have Tigers ahead of them there. You got FAMU. I guess that game is in Atlanta, but now there is talk that game might not be in Atlanta. I don't know. But regardless, I think FAMU is gonna get right in this game. Um, like I said, I don't, whatever Magic Valley had, I don't think it's coming 2 times in a row. If it does, then the Rattlers really need to do some soul searching. But right now, I do have them ahead there. Um, they go to Alabama A&M on October 11th, following that up with a home game against Lincoln, which right now is the only game that I have them as a W. Um, that there's not, like I said, there's not a lot of toss ups. So right now, it is tough to pick and choose. You followed it up with 2 road games at Alcorn, um, and then at Bethune Cookman. Bethune Cookman is probably the only toss-up game I have, and that's why I come to the 1.5, because I consider toss-ups as a half a game. That's where I come with that. Then they close out at home against Jackson State, Alabama State in Mobile, and then at Prairie View. 3 tough games on the road. Now they've played Prairie View close in recent years, but this Prairie View team could be different. So, I don't want to use that as a trend and give Valley anything extra. But there is not a lot here for this team. And so I don't like to pick teams to go winless. So I'm gonna go with a I'm gonna get them 2 wins this season. I like I said, I just don't see a lot there. Uh, so I'm gonna go 2-10 and 1-7 in conference. I'm gonna get them a conference win. I like I said, I personally can't get to where some people can get to. So they feel like they can see Valley winning 2 or 3 games, maybe 4. Two is right now. Two is honestly is stretching it for me right now. Um, but that's not to say that this team can't get up for somebody in one of these home games. Um, but their home slate is not super tough, but you get Southern and Jackson at home. Those 2 games are going to be emotional for you, especially the Jackson State game. But the Southern game is the first game at home, opening season on SWAC TV, new coach. There could be, enough of a buzz to get you through that. If that happens, then maybe some things start to turn around for you. Other than that, like I said, there's not a lot there in terms of just being able to say A, B, C, D. This is this can happen. If this happens, then they get here. So like I said, this was probably one of the toughest videos I've done because I didn't really have a lot to work with. So, I just had to kind of make it happen. So that's gonna do it for us today, man. Like I said, I'm not gonna dwell too long on this one. We'll be back with our preview this week. Working to get with my boy Coach 67 Sports, gotta holler at him. See if we can do another live Southern preview coming up before the start of the season. And then we'll just have a couple more of these to do before we wrap it up. MEAC Swag Challenge preview will be coming sometime next week, and Swag Smoke coming on Thursday. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the Swag Seawell signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.